Make God your CEO, and everything in your business, your network, your sales, everything will thrive. There are three essential qualities demonstrated by God Himself that all highly effective leaders have, that not only make them leaders people want to follow, people love to follow them. How much more effective would you be? How much more could you accomplish if your people loved to follow you? They backed you up no matter what. Lead the way God leads, and that's exactly what you're going to have. Now, if you're new here, which is 99% of you, my name is Ryan, and I talk about faith and finance and business and how they relate to you. But you are here for some answers, so let's just get straight to it. The first quality, what all highly effective leaders are great at doing, is not just understanding when it's appropriate to challenge your people, it's understanding why. We're going to talk about when to challenge your people after this, but first we need to understand why. Because think about it like this. Here's why. If you are a teacher and you are teaching your student, your job is to teach your student to understand the concept or topic, whatever it is, the way that you understand it. If you are teaching somebody who has a higher level of thinking and understands it better than you, it's probably not going to work out too well, right? So you are teaching your student to understand it the way that you do. That's what leadership is you as a leader, your job is to create other leaders. If you are the only leader in a group of people, you haven't led them well enough. Your job is to create other leaders. How do you do that? Why do we do that? Leaders rise up in the face of opposition. They don't cower away. Leaders rise up. They become a better version in the face of opposition, in the face of a challenge. That is why we challenge people. And we're going to go straight to scripture for this. I'm going to read a couple of different passages for you. And I'm going to tell you everywhere that I'm at. But we're going to go straight to Exodus 18, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more. But in Exodus 18, this is a passage where Moses is leading his people. He's doing his work, but his father-in-law comes to visit and just looks at everything that he's doing. And I'm just going to read from it. The next day, Moses took his seat to hear the people's disputes against each other. They waited before him from morning till evening. So they're pretty much in a court setting where everybody in that Moses is leading, they come to him in a court setting to handle their disputes. That's what's happening right now. And his father-in-law comes to him, and his father-in-law's name is Jethro. He comes to him, he watches and sees how Moses does all of the work from morning until evening. And so he just asks him, hey, what are you really accomplishing here? This is in verse 14. Why are you trying to do all of this alone while everyone stands around you from morning till evening? And that's kind of like an ego punch, right? It kind of seems like that's how Moses takes it. He responds to him, well, because the people come to me to get a ruling from God, when a dispute arises, they come to me. And I am the one who settles the case between the quarreling parties. I inform them, the people, of God's decrees and give them instructions. And his father-in-law says, this is not good. You are going to wear yourself out, and the people too. If it is all dependent on you, you are going to wear yourself out and them. This job is too heavy a burden for you to handle all by yourself. And then he gives them some advice. So this is the advice that he gives them. Now listen to me, and let me give you a word of advice. He's kind of throwing it back in his face. May God be with you. Of these people, teach them God's decrees and give them his instructions, but show them how to conduct their lives. And of this group, all these people depending on you, identify a group among them and train them how to handle their common disputes, and give them different sections to handle a group of 10, a group of 50, a group of 100. Give them the common disputes and have all the major ones come to you. He says they should always be available, this group of other leaders that are being trained. And he specifically says, select from all these people capable and honest men who fear God and hate bribes. Make them leaders over groups of 1,000, 150, and 10. They should always be available to handle the people's common disputes, but the major cases, bring them to you. They will help you carry the load, making the task easier for you. If you follow this advice, and if God commands you to do so, they will be able to endure the pressures, and all these people will go home in peace. Lo and behold, Moses follows this advice, and Moses tells him, I mean, everybody was better for it, not just for Moses, but for everybody there. The disputes were being handled more efficiently, which was not burning out Moses, but also was saving these people. They were getting their disputes handled quickly. Not instead of just waiting for Moses. I'm sure he had a wait time. Like the courts today, everything was getting handled because Moses didn't make it all dependent on him, because he was the big shot. He was the leader, right? If you are a leader who has no other leaders to depend on for yourself, you're not a leader, right? Well, you're not a true leader. There are different types of leader, and you're not a true leader. And this is why we challenge people, because other people also need to step up. It's not all about you. Your job as a leader is to create other autonomous and independent people who are capable individuals on their own, right? That is why we challenge people to create other leaders. And I'm going to give you another example. We're going to do a lot of reading. In this one, I'm not going to read straight from it. I'm just going to tell you exactly how it was. But this is in 1 Samuel 16 and 17. In 1 Samuel 16, we all know the story of David, right? But what's happening is, before David was anointed to be king, anointed to become one of the biggest leaders in the world, before he was anointed to do that, the king himself, the previous king, God told him to find this family in, what was it, Jerusalem? Maybe I should be reading it. Bethlehem? Maybe I should be reading it. But he says there's a family in Bethlehem. Fact check me, that's okay. There's a family in Bethlehem, and there's 8 brothers. I want you to pick and anoint the next king from these brothers. And so they bring this family to the palace, and the king is looking at all of these, the person who God has given these instructions to, he's looking at all these brothers, and he picks the oldest, the strongest, and the wisest one, right? Who wouldn't? And God said, not this one. I have declined him to be king, right? This is not the one. Go to the next. And so he goes to the next oldest, who is the next strongest and the next oldest, right? And God says, nope, next one. I've declined this man. And he goes down the line and gets to the 7th brother, and there's no more. And so they ask the father, are these all of your sons? And he says, no, there's one more. He's tending our sheep. He's a shepherd, right? That's what he's doing. And they said, we will not be done until you bring that son to me, and we need to look at him. And so this is the youngest and the smallest. He wasn't weak, though. This was the youngest brother, and his name was David. And this is the one God said, okay, this is the one, he will be king. And he was the youngest, right? And I don't know where we get the idea. This is where David is anointed to be king. He was just a shepherd boy, right? But I don't know where we get the idea that somehow David was this tiny little frail little boy. He wasn't tiny, he wasn't small. He was the youngest, though. And the way one of the servants describes David is, this is a man of war. He's a warrior. This is a man of God, right? That's how they describe him. He wasn't small. He wasn't a frail little boy. He was strong. And it tells us, as he was being a shepherd, protecting these sheep, he would fight off lions and bears with his bare hands. He would beat them with a club and unclench their jaws to get the sheep out of their mouths. He was not small and weak. And so when we get to the story where David and Goliath, right, everybody knows that. The one person who wasn't at this event, where Goliath is demanding, send me one man, and if he defeats me, we'll be your slaves. If we defeat you, though, all of you will be our slaves. And nobody is stepping up except for David. And at this point, he's still a shepherd boy. And he was really just delivering some items to all these great warriors, right? When he sees what's happening, and he tells Saul, hey, let me fight him. And Saul kind of laughs in his face, and he said, that's where he tells him the story. I've been fighting lions and bears. I'm ready for this. Let me fight him. And so they let him go out, and the rest is history, right? We all know the story. But here's what happened. Notice what happened. When David was anointed to be king, God didn't give him a crown. He gave him Goliath, right? That was the ultimate way to step up. And all the while, he was preparing him. So we're about to talk about that. We're going to talk about how God prepares people and what you need to be doing. But that it serves the purpose. challenging people is the best way to understand and see if they're capable or willing to rise to the occasion, because that's what a leader does. And as I was writing this stuff out, I even came up with more stories. I'm going to save those for another video, but comment if you know who John Tyler is. And I'm going to give you a hint. He was one of the presidents of the United States. And John Tyler, that's his name. Take some time to think. Have you ever heard of John Tyler? And I guarantee you, you haven't. His nickname during his presidency was his Accidency, because of the way this guy became president. He was in 1841. So if you said I might have heard, no, you haven't. You have never heard of this man. His nickname was his Accidency, because when the president before him, he was a vice president. When the president before him gave his inauguration speech, he became president, he immediately passed away. And so John Tyler now was handed the role of being in charge of an entire nation. But nobody knows his name because he was given the presidency. He never earned it. There were no challenges for him. He was selected to be vice president, but somehow got handed the position of being in charge of one of the strongest nations in the world. They named him his Accidency, and if you look him up, it says nobody respected him. He tried to veto one thing, and nobody respected him, so they all stepped down. They're like, nope, not doing this, right? That's why we challenge people, because leaders are not handed the position. There are certain positions where they're handed, but nobody respects those leaders. You became a leader on accident. Nobody respects that leader, right? David is a very common name, but as soon as I say King David, everybody knows who I'm talking about, because he fought Goliath. He's earned the right to be king. He wasn't given a crown, he was given Goliath. But that's why, okay, that's a very long-winded reason as to why we challenge people. But now we need to understand when it's appropriate, and that is the equipping phase. So first we challenge our people, but we also need to equip them, because the challenge is not meant to be easy, but it's also not meant to be impossible. When David was in training to be king, he was anointed to be king. He was still a shepherd boy, right? That was still his job. He wasn't king yet, but he already knew he was supposed to be king, yet he still had the job of being a shepherd boy. This man was fighting lions and bears in preparation for Goliath, but I guarantee you he didn't realize that's what it was for. He was a man of war. He was a warrior. That's what he was as a shepherd, right? And the reason this is important, and it's because, yes, this tells us when we should be challenging our people. It's when they're capable of rising to the occasion. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Again, you are equipping them to rise to the next level. They need to do that on their own, which is what the challenge is for, but you are equipping them enough so that they can be capable of rising up. And I've heard this example, and I always like to use it. When you first start going to the gym, you pick up a weight and you say it's too heavy. Let's be honest, is it too heavy, or are you just not strong enough? Right? That's why we need to equip. The more we work out, the stronger we get. And the stronger we get, the more capable we are now we have experience. Even if we start a new exercise, yes, it's brand new, but now that we have the experience, we're capable of adjusting and adapting and rising and becoming a better version of ourselves. But that needs to be in place first. So yes, it's appropriate to challenge, and yes, we understand why. But again, we often picture David as a small little boy. He was a man of war. There's Jesse, which was the father of these 8 boys. He's telling him, he didn't even bring him when the king asked them to come to the palace. He didn't even bring him, right? But just because you are not where you want to be yet doesn't mean God's not preparing you for where he needs you to be later. Sometimes where you are now is not for now, it's for later. Sometimes the gifts you've been given now is not the end. It's not the end all, right? For me, this is the best example I can give. I am a terrible speaker. Naturally, I'm a terrible speaker. And right now, I've been speaking about for 15 minutes. When I first started social media, I started on TikTok. How cool. And to make a 60-second video, I kid you not, it took me an hour to create that video. And now I've been talking for 15 minutes without having to need any edits, any pauses, and I'm still not great at it. Help me out, put something in the comment, leave some kind of support, because I'm still not great at it, but I'm much better than I was before. My gift was not speaking. My gift was extreme discipline. I've been working at this for 3 years to be able to speak for 16 minutes without having to pause and gather my thoughts and edit everything out of me saying, right? The gift I was given was discipline, and it was used for me to become a better speaker. As crazy as it is, I'm a naturally terrible speaker, yet thousands and thousands of people every single day and every single week, hundreds of thousands, I mean, we're getting to millions hopefully soon, they stop and listen to me speak through social media. That's not because I was a great speaker. That's because God gave me discipline as a child. I was very disciplined. And I'm tying this together because the gift you have now is not just the end of it. Stop complaining about what you don't have. Start realizing what He did give you and use it to push you to where you need to be. That's the same thing you need to be doing for your people. Giving them what they need now, but in preparation for later. You are equipping your people, and there will be challenges all along the way. That's why I kind of didn't start with this one, equipping. There's challenge, then we equip. We understand why, and then when. It's all along the way. It's continuous. You're never going to not be challenged. If you're not being challenged anymore, you're not in the right environment to grow. You can't grow if you're not being challenged. You can't become stronger if you don't lift weights that are too heavy, right? So we need to understand that why it's so important and then when. Because what if where you are now is not where God wants you to stay? Imagine that. What if God of the universe, who gave you all these gifts and talents, actually has a plan? Imagine that. What if? And it's your job to equip your people just how God has been equipping you from day one. He gave you natural gifts. He gave you natural talents, and it's your job to use them. He doesn't tell you exactly how to use it, because that's the beauty of freedom of choice. But He gives you the ability to rise to the occasion in the face of a challenge. And every person I bring onto my team, which we are expanding, by the way, if you want to add another income to your portfolio, fill out the application in the description. I tell them up front, I have a role in this business. You have a role in this business. My role is not to train you on every single financial product. It's not to teach you how to set up a budget, even though I will teach you guidelines. But there are other better people who you should be listening to. Our focus is growth and expansion, right? There is a fine line. We need to understand that passage from Moses. If you try to do everything on your own, yes, you are a great leader, and yes, your job is to equip your people, but sometimes you're not the best position or the best person to do that. You need to be surrounded by a good group of people. So it does start with sort of finding other leaders to help you lead your people. No leader is just the leader. There are always other leaders that you need help from, that you need to depend on. Our focus is growth and expansion, but I will always put you in the proper place to receive these skills, to receive this knowledge. I will always equip you. It may not come from me, but I will always put you in the right positions to gain those things. It's extremely important to understand that you are not the only person who can equip your people the right way. You can take it from me, or I can put you in front of somebody else who's making 7 figures, and you can take it from them. Either way, we're getting equipped and we're getting trained, and everybody goes up together, right? It's not always about you. You need to equip your people in the best way possible, and part of that is understanding that you're not always the right person for that. So equip your people and do it right. But the last thing, and the last, maybe the more important one, is that first we challenge, second we equip, and third we serve. Okay? And there is no better example for this than watching and, well, I guess reading. So if we go and read about the Last Supper, there's no better example than seeing and reading Jesus realizes He has all authority over all people and over all the earth. He has all authority, and so He decides to wash His disciples' feet. Okay, How powerful is that? That he didn't just stumble upon it like, oh, I guess somebody's feet they're dirty, right? They didn't have shoes, they had sandals, of course they were dirty. It was because he realized he had authority. That is why he served. It's not like, oh, if I can. It's not, well, if I get to it. It was a point. He made it a point to serve. He has all authority, and that is why he serves. But I'm going to give you another example, because every time God anoints somebody to be in a position of leadership, which if you're watching this video, I guarantee you that's you. It may not always be the position of leadership you want, but it is still a position of leadership. Every time he anoints somebody to be a leader, he equips them, yes, but there's always a purpose behind the leadership. Right? And when he equips you, there's always a purpose behind that. And I've talked about this before in other videos. If you haven't seen any of them, again, go and subscribe or come fill out an application. I can teach you different wealth principles. But wealth without a purpose is just a distraction. And I'm giving this example because we're going to come back to after David. So David was king, but after David was Solomon, right? Solomon was anointed to be king, and yes, we all know he was the wisest and the wealthiest and the most famous man to have ever lived, right? He was the most famous man at that time, but he's the wisest and wealthiest man to have ever lived. But even Solomon, as he was becoming king, he recognized, God, I am like a little child who doesn't know his way around, and I'm in the midst of your own chosen people, a nation so great and numerous they cannot be counted. He is recognizing that he is not the best person for this job, which is why God equips him with the wisdom and the wealth. But he's recognizing that he is in this position to serve. All of us, we all know that he became wise and very wealthy, but why? Why did God give him those things? Solomon asked, give me an understanding heart so that I can govern your people well and know the difference between right and wrong. Solomon was the wisest and wealthiest man, not yet, it's about to come, but he was the wisest and wealthiest man, and his purpose was to serve. Even his purpose was to serve, and because of this, God recognized, I anointed the right one. This man is here to serve. And that's why I will give you the wisdom, but I will also give you what you didn't ask for, which is the wealth and the fame. Use these to serve my people. And as you go throughout 1 Kings chapter 3 to 11, 11 is kind of the downfall of Solomon, but so 1 Kings chapter 3 to 10, every time Solomon did something great, he gave glory to God. He built a temple, it was for God. And in 1 Kings chapter 10, it's pretty much just telling us how wealthy Solomon was, and it's laying out his business model. And it even tells us Solomon stayed true to his word up until a certain point later, but he stayed true to his word, and God kept blessing him because his blessings were used to serve other people. He said, give me an understanding heart so that I can govern your people well. It was always about governing God's people well. It was always about service, and God kept on blessing him for it. He did it so well, he served so well, and kept bringing the glory back to God, that in 1 Kings chapter 10, it literally tells us that the people of Jerusalem under King Solomon's reign stopped counting silver. Right? They had so much gold and other precious metals and lumber and all these different things that they had so much silver they stopped counting it. It said the people of Jerusalem treated silver. It was so plentiful that they treated silver as common stone. Go outside and pick up a stone in those days of Jerusalem. That was pure silver. That's how much they had. It was always about service though. And in the next chapter, chapter 11, it's kind of crazy how, I don't know how many years go by in between, but in the year between, whatever, I don't know how long goes by, but in between chapter 10 and chapter 11, here's what happens. Solomon stopped using everything that God blessed him with to serve his people well. He started using it for himself and started to depend on the wealth and the wisdom that God gave him instead of depending on the God who gave him the wisdom and the wealth. Within like the first 2 or 3 chapters, after telling us how wealthy and amazing Solomon was, it says, But Solomon loved many foreign women, and proceeds to tell us how he had fallen from God. So, I mean, I guess that proves another point. When you serve other people, when you remain true to your word, God blesses you. God blesses you very well. And it's not just for Solomon. I mean, you can see this in different scenarios. Jesus washing his disciples' feet. That's not a very lavish thing to do, right? Solomon's was very lavish. Jesus Christ, he was washing people's feet, and he had all authority. And I bring this up all just to say that your position of leadership is not going to look the same as somebody else's, not always. There are different types of leaders, and your job is to identify the one that you are. And it's not always going to look the same, and you need to find a way to be happy with it. No matter what, your job is to challenge your people, to equip them to rise up to the challenge, and then serve them so that they can continue doing well on their own. When everybody's serving each other, nobody's left unserved, and everybody does well. So this is the end of the video, and I have nothing else to say. So subscribe and come back later for the next videos. Check the links in my description if you are interested in adding an income to your portfolio. But I'll see you in the next video. Bye.